And you wonder, well, where are those jobs? Start to scroll down through that report. The very first category on that report is construction jobs, and the curve for construction jobs over that time period does this. And every sector that you look at, the curve just falls off. As we get closer through 2009, we're having job losses everywhere, and you wonder, well, where did those 142,000 jobs come from? When you get to the very bottom of the report, there's a sector called government, and it looks like this. Government sector jobs have skyrocketed in the state of Texas. We have, in fact, added 156,000 government sector jobs. But wait, Deborah, I thought you said we only had 142,000 more people working. That's right. You've got 14,000 fewer private sector employees supporting 156,000 more government sector employees. The private sector pays the wages and benefits of government sector employees. When you take from those private individuals and those private businesses to support that bigger government, you get bigger government. And that's why the economy in Texas is struggling. This is not just about an economic recession. It's not just about a housing boom or bust. It's not just about the Federal Reserve doubling the supply of money. It's about government growth in Texas. I pointed out in that second debate, while the governor is talking about cutting spending in Texas, and he will tell you that he has ordered every department in Texas to cut their spending by 5 cents. He got here, Johnny come lately. We all started cutting spending 2 years ago. He's finally issued that directive while he's traveling to Italy to get an award. And while his own executive branch has increased their spending in the first 3 months of this fiscal year by 13.5%. The executive department in Texas spent 13.5% more in October, November, and December of 2009 than they did in October, November, and December of 2008. That's big government, and it's killing Texas. So we've got to understand that getting rid of property tax is a freedom thing, but it is also the economic boost that we need. It will give us $3 billion of net personal income increase, and it will add 150,000 jobs to the Texas economy. The second element of freedom, I have said, is gun ownership. And I didn't think we really needed to talk about that in Texas. And then we had the Fort Hood shooting, and the governor moved $1.5 million in the state budget into psychological counseling. And I thought, well, I guess we have to revisit gun ownership in Texas. Fort Hood ought to underscore for us a couple of things. It's not the first time, and it won't be the last, that something like that happens. We had a shooting in Luby's here a number of years ago. We had Columbine, we had Virginia Tech, we had 9/11, we had Fort Hood. Every time we have one of those tragic events, our elected officials in their wisdom take their guns and our ammo away from law-abiding citizens. Our founders understood gun ownership was an essential element of freedom. They said our right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, and yet we take the guns away. I have said, if we understood man and we understood a constitutional republic, our leaders would be saying, buy a gun, learn to use it, and keep it with you. That will keep you safe. Fort Hood shows us again that there's no amount of police protection, there's no amount of military presence that's going to protect you from one deranged individual walking into a crowded room intent on doing harm. We talk about life, liberty, and property being inalienable rights given to us by the Creator. And yet through our laws we make criminals of law-abiding citizens who are trying to protect their own life. In order for you to be protecting those sitting around you and this one standing on the stage, you have to have gone through a class. I taken the time to do that, but I don't think you should have to. You want to carry a gun in public, you carry a gun in public, so when that crazy person comes through that back door, he gets dropped before he does too much damage in here because somebody sitting next to you has a gun and knows how to use it. That discussion in the last legislative session over open carry in Texas is one that we ought not have to have. It's an inalienable right. God gave it to us, and our government ought not be trying to give us consent for what God's already given us. It's our right. They can't take it away. Private property ownership and gun ownership, two essential elements of freedom. There was some mention in my introduction of what's happening in the economy at the national level. Where are we? When I made the decision to get into this race, I shifted my focus. I, maybe like many of you, have been watching Washington, D.C. for years and putting a lot of pressure on Washington and kind of not knowing what's going on in Texas to the level and detail that I knew what was happening in Washington, and I really began to shift my focus to study Texas. I said from the very beginning of this campaign, I had 3 jobs to do. I had to run a business, I had to run a statewide campaign, and I had to prepare to be governor. I've spent the last year, and I will continue to prepare so that when I take that office in January 2011, I will have 2 years of studying and preparing to be governor. And I knew I am a nurse with a business degree. I knew a little bit about economics, and I knew that there was a school of economic thought called the Austrian School. Austrians are free market economists. They're very much opposed to a federal central banking system. I knew that there was at least a school of thought out there that said everything the Federal Reserve was doing was the wrong medicine for a free country. I knew that what the Federal Reserve was doing to our monetary supply had been tried before in a country called Germany, and it caused that currency to be completely devalued, and it caused a period of hyperinflation. And God forbid that's what's coming to the United States of America, but if you're watching the world finance markets, you know that the value of our dollar is very unstable. And if in fact the U.S. dollar continues to decline in value, if in fact we find ourselves headed towards a period of hyperinflation, is there something that Texas could do? Is there something that leaders in Texas could do, should have done, had they seen that coming? I bet most of you in the last 2 years have moved your investments, have you not? You knew that things on Wall Street were changing and you shifted your investments around, but the state of Texas has a good deal of assets. She hasn't moved hers, by and large. They're still invested in those same toxic vehicles that drove Goldman Sachs and Lehman Brothers and others to their knees financially, because we're not watching what's going on and we're not using sound free market principles to manage the state of Texas. In fact, if we had, as a state, shifted just 5 to 10% of our assets to gold and silver, like most investment advisors will coach you to do today, 5 to 10% of your portfolio ought to be in a commodity. If we had done that in Texas a year ago, we would have the 6th largest gold reserve in the world, right behind China. The state of Texas. Not the United States of America, the state of Texas. The 13th largest economy in the world. Are there things that leadership in this state can do to protect the citizens of this state from the mistakes that are being made in Washington, D.C. that may in fact jeopardize the economy of the state of Texas? Yes, there are things that we can do if we're alert and paying attention and have leadership. Instead, we have a governor that tries to dance around today telling you that he didn't advocate for that bailout. He wrote the letter the day before the vote on the bailout and said, Congress, do something. He was advocating for that bailout. The senator voted for that bailout. We all knew that wasn't the role of government. We've got bailouts happening right here in Texas. We have a Texas Emerging Technology Fund and a Texas Enterprise Fund, and we're taking bread off